Well, the first thing I can tell you about this car is it's put together very, very well indeed. It has the old school BMW solid build quality. Everything on this car feels solid. Dashboard solid, good quality, no messing around with here. This is not one of the new ugly computers that we now know as BMW. The car feels very, very, very well put together. It feels like a bigger car in terms of its feel. It's very solid. It feels like it's on railway tracks. There's not a lot of lean in the car at all on the corners, even though this is not a sports version. Suspension is not very bouncy like you get with a lot of older cars. As I say, this is not the sport suspension. It feels very, very, very balanced and has a very energetic, almost poised feel about it. Visibility around the car is very, very, very good. Remember, this is not a large car and it is very spacious inside, and again everything feels well put together. The dashboard is the usual BMW style, very clear, very precise, and further still, it's not in any way obscured by the steering wheel, which incidentally I happen to come across all the time in many, many cars. This is not a fast car by any means, and I don't think it's designed to be one. But if the road's clear now, we'll give it a 0 to 60 test, give you an idea what you're dealing with. Let's give them a little room. Okay, from 0 now. That's 60. So obviously we're not dealing with a fast car here, but that's not why these cars are made. Furthermore, it's not really what it's designed for. This is a diesel. It's designed to be a car promoting longevity and a reasonable fuel economy at the time. You got to remember, this car is from 1994. It's now 2012, and diesel is now more expensive than petrol. In fact, it's £1.50 a litre. It does have a turbo. I'm not aware of the turbo kicking in at all. A lot of cars will have an articulated feel when they wobble, almost like they're boating, which is not a nice feeling. This one I could quite easily drive down the motorway, and I'd feel confident that I could swerve out of a lane if I had to in the case of an emergency. The brakes on this car are absolutely superb. I can only compare them to the brakes of an E34. When it comes to the braking, BMW really seem to have got it right. This car is built to last, there's no doubt about it. This particular model now is the best part of 18 years old, and it's running beautifully. It's been well maintained, it's been well serviced, but the car, if this car was looked after, I think it'd be here in another 10 years. If the car wasn't here in 10 years, the engine most certainly would be. The visibility on this car is quite fantastic. There's no obstructions at all. A lot of cars, you'll look in the rear view mirror and you'll come across the headrests or something of that effect, or maybe a over bulky A, B or C pillar, but this one is quite clever like that. You won't have any problems with visibility. Been running this car for a little while now. By modern standards, it's not at all economical, so don't be deluded that you will be getting an instant fuel economy with this car, because you won't. It just doesn't work that way. It's not a fast car. It's not particularly torquey or powerful. I do get to drive a lot of the modern BMW diesels, and they're very fast cars and they're very powerful cars. Well, basically, if I have to say anything about this car at all, I would say it's extremely reliable. It starts every time. I think this car has probably got a bulletproof engine. It's a very solid build car. There's no rust on this car. With a lot of other models of BMWs, you would have notorious rust spots like the rust around the fuel filler cap, the sills, the wheel arches. I think when it came to BMW, they seem to have got it right with this car. The E36 was a very good model. There's no way as good looking as the E30, but it's a fantastic car. You can pick these cars up now for £600 to £800. They're not expensive to maintain, despite what people may tell you. Look after the car, it's going to be very, very reliable. It's a very comfortable ride. This is the turbo diesel. I think the turbo diesel S is the one with the more features, the air conditioning, etc, etc, moderate climate control, computers. But this is by no means basic. I would be very comfortable in driving this car across France or across Europe, you know, or to make a long journey. This car was built to last, and it shows when you drive the car. Very, very comfortable. There seems to be a lot of noise with an old style BMW diesel. If you stand next to this car when it drives past, it does quite literally sound like a tractor. But, you know, if you like diesels, you like diesels. It's as simple as that. You know, I'm coming back to the braking now on this car. The braking is phenomenal. It really is. Very, very, very good. On this car you have a sport, a manual and an economy model. A mode change rather. So you can mess around with the gears if you like. The sport mode doesn't really make it a faster car. It just means basically it'll drop down a gear, accelerate a little bit quicker, and also when the gears go to change, they will change at a later stage, so you get more out of it. You do have an economy meter on the dashboard, but while you're accelerating you don't really see it. It's only when you get up to your speed that you're going to be sustaining that you can expect to see it. Right now I'm doing 40 miles an hour and it's sitting between 20 and 35 miles per gallon, which is pretty good really if you think about it. So I think to summarise, basically, if you're looking for a cheap, reliable, well-built car, then the E36 is a good option, especially the diesels. You know, you mustn't forget you've got the fast versions of this car too. You've got the 325s, you've got the M3s. There are some sporty models. Economically wise, for a diesel, it's not a cheap car to run. But, you know, what is a cheap car to run nowadays? All in all, very good car. I'd be quite happy to drive around in this. I'd recommend it to anybody. We had the door panels off the other day to service the electric windows, and we could see there were security bars in there for side impacts, which is always a nice thing to know. Beautiful ride, very silky smooth. You know, this floats down the road like it's on railway tracks. It really does. You go around the corners, there's no lean, and this hasn't got sport suspension at all. Very comfortable car, great driving position. Really is a pleasure to drive. An old school diesel. An old school diesel, which I have to say is very, very, very good. Thinking of buying one of these, do your research and be patient and do some hunting around. The more you wait, the more you look, the better deal you'll get. If you hunt around, you'll find one of these. Low mileage, very good condition. It'd be worth the extra effort trying to find one, because if you got a good one, you'd be happy to keep it. I can say from a mechanical perspective that one thing these cars are notorious for is the trailing arm bushes. At the end of the day, it's not a very complicated part, it's just a rubber bush that goes in the trailing arms, but it is something that can be a little bit fiddly to fix if you don't have the know-how or a pulley. The reason why I bring those up is because they are known for going, and really if you've got one of these, after 50,000 miles you want to be changing them. The actual bushes themselves are probably only about £10, but that will be a common fault. You'll know when it's gone, because what you'll have is you'll have the rear wheels on one side sitting in a funny position. It will be sitting a little bit awkward. You can see that it's not in the correct position. And obviously if you do one side, then you have to do the other. It's important that you do both sides, because if you do one, the other one will go even quicker. It's always a golden rule with cars. If you change the suspension on one side, you've got to do it on both sides. Do it in pairs. For a car of this size, even with power steering, I have to say the steering is actually quite heavy. But it's a pleasant heavy. It feels certain. And I think if this was a front-wheel drive car, it just wouldn't work at all. This loves the corners, this car. And I have to admit, I haven't actually had the pleasure of driving the M3 version of this, but after driving this one now, I'm looking forward to happening, because it will be a good drive. BMW seems to get it right with the 3 Series, the E30, the E36, even the 2012 model is a great looking car. Just wonder why they can't seem to maintain it with all the other ones. This has got a 2.5 litre engine. I wouldn't have said this would be a good car to tow anything with. It's not a big car, but then again, it's not a tiny car either. But it doesn't feel like the diesel engine is the type of engine for towing something along. This car, I believe, was probably built and designed basically to last a long time, give people their money's worth. I know a lot of products are made these days and they're designed to fail after the warranty. Obviously we live in a consumer market and people want you to come back and buy more products. But with this car doesn't have that feel. It doesn't feel like things are loose even after all these years. Everything feels intact, nothing's hanging off, nothing's become disconnected. Everything's obviously used, but it's still all there, it's still all complete. It's still got all its bits and bobs and all the gadgetry that you do have, like your electric mirrors and what have you. They're all working fine. Nothing wrong with these at all. So, if you're thinking of buying one of these, you want a lot of car for not a lot of money, and you want something that's going to be reliable, get yourself a diesel.